the first Israel-U.S. war against Iran, and there will be others if it reconstitutes its nuclear program, I suspect. How do you feel it's shaking out? Of course, we have a CNN report of unnamed officials leaking a damage assessment that says we didn't destroy the program, and I'm not believing it at all. Might be true, but I'm just not believing that. So what do you think?
Well, I can't gainsay that report. I did see it, came across my transom too. These are very early and initial damage assessments. There are elements within the intelligence community that are synthesized in these reports that are presented to us, perhaps by ODNI and others, that purport to claim that the Iranian program is not especially advanced, that it is years away from having the desire to make a bomb, much less the capability to do so, and had no indications that it was making this bomb. That conflicts with Israeli intelligence. It also conflicts with testimony that we heard from Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who told the Senate, a Senate committee, just hours before Israel launched these strikes, that the Iranians were developing something that looked a lot like to us, like a fissionable device. So there's conflict here. New York Times had a report not too long after these strikes that maintained the whole facility at Fordo was not necessarily destroyed, meaning that every single room imploded. But that seems immaterial if these very complicated and cascading centrifuge facilities, which are sprawling, have been degraded or destroyed to the degree that they cannot function as intended, that they cannot support a nuclear weapons program. And all of this is very big. All of it is interlocking. All of it is complicated. And if you lose one piece, you lose quite a bit of your ability to develop a fissionable device, which is very difficult to do. It requires a lot of state resources, a big footprint. It's the kind of thing that's hard to miss. So we may find out in the next several weeks that Iran has retained enough of its highly enriched uranium to maintain a capacity to build a weapon, or even a few facilities that could support that. But the scientific community that had the knowledge to do that is dead. Most of the facilities that were designed to produce that bomb are destroyed or inoperative or unable, or Iranians cannot access them. So the notion here that its program has only been set back a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, seems to me pretty premature. And if it was, we are now invested in a status quo in which this president needs to maintain the doctrinal approach he's taken to the Iranian bomb, which is that you will not have these facilities. He has promised again and again that we will destroy these facilities whenever they pop up. And I think after 4 years of this administration, he will bequeath that doctrine to the next president. And the next president will be deeply
I believe, by the
invested in it.
way, your statement of the Trump doctrine that no non-nuclear power will be allowed to advance to nuclear power status is, in fact, the Trump doctrine. I had earlier said 60 days means 60 days. That's a Trump doctrine, too. But your doctrine is much better put than my doctrine. I do not believe that. What's interesting, longtime critics of Netanyahu, like Yossi Klein Halevi and Daniel Hartman, have had to lay down their antipathy to Netanyahu and say, well done, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm going to go back to hating on you tomorrow. That does not seem to be happening in the United States, Noah Rothman.
Insofar as the public maintains its skepticism of the Trump administration? In what sense?
Yeah, that the left hasn't. Very few people other than Fetterman and one Democratic congressman has come out and said, this was a good idea. Because every president's promised to do it since Bill Clinton.
Yeah, and there's some groping for a rationale, right? There's indications, there's some really preliminary polling that suggests the American public are a little squeamish about this whole enterprise. So Democrats are positioning themselves to take advantage of that sentiment if it materializes into something that's politically exploitable. I understand that. But they're groping for a rationale to justify inaction in the face of what Israel had established here, not just the threat that Iran poses, which is perpetual and growing, but that the window of opportunity that had been opened up over 18 months of war in which Israel degraded the primary means by which Iran would retaliate for attacks on its nuclear program. The window of opportunity was there, it was wide open, and the Trump administration deserves credit for taking advantage of it. So what Democrats have said is that the threat is not imminent, that this is very much like the run-up to the Iraq War, that we were lied into the Iraq War. I don't think anybody, save Iranian officials, denies that Iran has an illicit nuclear weapons program. It would be pretty hard to pass that one over on us. There's also been the claim that, exposing our troops to the hazards of combat makes them more vulnerable. And we have done a ton of assets positioned in the Middle East. Isn't that really, really dangerous? Mark Kelly said that, to which I would respond, why, Senator, do you think we have 40,000 troops positioned in the Middle East? It's not for fun. They're positioned there because the Iranian regime is constitutionally committed to aggression, and they are there to deter that aggression. If the region threat environment in the region changes, our posture would change accordingly. But it just makes absolutely no sense. It's a non sequitur to say that the U.S. military, all of whom are volunteers who signed up for this sort of thing, would reject the idea that they should be put in harm's way. That's why they're there.
That's why I agree. Now, last question. If this was effective, we can finally pivot to the Pacific. And I mean, it is what we need to do. It's what we've needed to do for 20 years. If this was effective, the poison roots that spread all over the Middle East have been pulled up. If it was effective. You agree with that?
If the regime were to collapse.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel.